Hi, good morning, everyone. It's Councillor Santos checking in.
Hi, Councillor
Hi,
Santos.
Councillor
We can hear
Santos.
you.
You're coming through clear.
Thanks so much.
Audio check, test 1, 2.
Good morning, this is Councillor Barr checking in.
You're coming through, Councillor Brar. Councillor Palashi, can we do a mic check? Councillor Keenan, mic check.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. You're coming through clear, Councillor Palashi. Councillor
Good
Keenan.
morning, everybody.
Perfect. Thank you. You're coming through clear.
Good morning.
Good morning, Marlon. You're coming through clear.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Councillor Medeiros, can I have you do a mic check, please? I'm not sure if that was you who just spoke.
Yeah, my apologies. Good morning.
Good morning. You're coming through clear. Thank you.
As we begin today's meeting, we would like to acknowledge that we are gathering here on the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and before them the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Huron, and Wendat. We also acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and other global Indigenous people that now call Brampton their home. We are honored to live, work, and enjoy this land. Good morning and welcome to our meeting of Brampton's Committee of Council. Madam Clerk, can you please let us know if we have quorum?
Through you, Chair Vasante, yes, we have quorum this morning.
Very good. Approval of the agenda. Does any member wish to add a business item to today's meeting? Seeing none, I have a motion moved by Councillor Power to approve today's agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Do any members have a declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for any matter to be considered on today's agenda? I see none. Madam Clerk, please note for the meeting minutes. We're now moving on to our consent committee. As part of our consent motion process, I will read each agenda item that is subject to the consent motion, and any member may verbally identify the item to be held for debate during the meeting. Any item not held for debate will be considered as part of the consent motion and voted on for approval. We'll begin with item 7.1, staff updates, government relation matters. That is in consent. Item 8.1.1 we will hold for presentation. Item 8.2.1 we will hold for delegation. Item 8.2.2, staff report request to begin procurement and maintenance services for street lighting, park and pathway lighting. That is in consent. 8.2.3, a staff report request to begin procurement for preventative and demand maintenance services for overhead door equipment at various city locations for a 3-year period. In consent. 8.2.4, staff report request to begin procurement for janitorial services at various city locations for a 3-year period. In consent. 8.2.5, a staff report update on sourcing of diesel and biodiesel. In consent. Item 8.2.6, staff report and budget amendment, addition and renovation of Chris Gibson Recreation Center, Child Care Facility, integration of Ward 1, held by Councillor Tour. Item 8.3.1, correspondence from Lorraine Johnson regarding 8.2.1, new ground cover maintenance and prohibited plants bylaw. In consent. Item 9.2.1, a staff report request to begin procurement for supply and delivery of fire apparatus. In consent. We will hold item 10.1.1, a staff presentation on regulation of encroachments on city lands. Item 10.2.1, staff report, proposed bylaw to regulate encroachments. We will hold that. Item 10.2.2, a staff report on the ward boundary review held by Deputy Mayor Singh. Item 10.3.1, the minutes of the Accessibility Advisory Committee for February 25th, 2025. In consent. Item 12.2.1, the staff report on office development charge deferral and waiver pilot program. In consent. Item 12.2.2, staff report on annual statement of remuneration and expenses for
Hold on the
2024.
employment DCs. Sorry.
You're holding the DCs? Very good.
Yeah, direction is needed.
Thank you, Councillor Pleshy. Item 12.2.2, the staff report on annual statement of remuneration and expenses for 2024, held by Councillor Tour. Item 12.2.3, a staff report on the 2024 annual sponsorship report. In consent. Item 12.2.2, staff report on the 2025 protocol policy updates. In consent. Item 12.2.5, a staff report implementing Brampton's Made in Canada procurement policy. Held by Councillor Tour. Item 12.4.1, correspondence from Annette Groves, the Mayor of the Town of Caledon, regarding a request that the Province of Ontario reimburse expenses incurred related to dissolution of Region of Peel. In consent. Item 12.4.2, again, correspondence from Annette Groves, the Mayor of the Town of Caledon, regarding a request that the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs release the confidential recommendation of the Repeal Transition Board. In consent. Item 13.1, our referred matters list. In consent. We will hold in-camera session, item 15.1, to receive a verbal update from the solicitor on advice regarding a planning matter. And so with that, I will ask the clerk to summarize our consent agenda.
Through you, Chair. Following items will be included on the consent motion. 7.1, Government Relations Matters. 8.2.2, staff report, request to begin procurement of maintenance services for street lighting. 8.2.3, staff report, request to begin procurement for preventative and demand maintenance services for overhead door equipment. 8.2.4, staff report, request to begin procurement for janitorial services. 8.2.5, staff report, update on sourcing of diesel and biodiesel. 8.3.1, correspondence from Lorraine Johnson regarding ground cover maintenance and prohibited plants bylaw. 9.2.1, staff report, request to begin procurement for supply and delivery of fire apparatus. 10.3.1, minutes, the Accessibility Advisory Committee from February 25th, 2025. 12.2.3, staff report, annual sponsorship report. 12.2.4, staff report, 2025 protocol policy updates. 12.4.1, correspondence from Annette Groves, Mayor of the Town of Caledon, and 12.4.2, correspondence from Annette Groves, Mayor of the Town of Caledon. And the last item is 13.1, referred matters list.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Councillor Power, you'd like to have 15.1 into the consent motion? Yes, please. So we would like to amend that and add 15.1 to consent.
Okay.
Very good. So I have a motion moved. Councillor Tour.
Just to clarify, sorry, a little bit of confusion. Mr. Chair, the motion that you had in the agenda regarding the fire hydrants, is that in consent or?
It is not in consent. We will deal with it when it comes
Okay.
on the agenda.
Also, just a quick comment. I'm not holding some of the items here regarding procurement, but I keep having the same frustration again when we're reaching the end of life of those contracts and we're coming to procurement just a few months before that. I don't want to hold every single item to discuss it again and again, but this is the third year of this term. I'm expressing the same frustration again. A contract's coming to end in 2025 in a few months. We don't bring it up like a few months before that to discuss going out for a new RFP or renewal of contracts. So I think if we can just work on that again, at least give like a 6 months or more time that we can discuss these, I think that would be helpful.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tour. Also a request from Deputy Mayor Singh if we can allow item 12.3.2 to also be in consent regarding the NEWAs. That'll be in consent. Madam Clerk, so noted. Item 12.3.2. So noted. So we have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Singh for our consent agenda. All in favor? And that carries. Next is delegations. We will have delegations now, and just to our delegations, a note that you're permitted a maximum of 5 minutes for your delegation. I'll ask for Henry Verschuren and Major Dwight Sharp to come up and delegate with regards to Branch 15 of the Royal Canadian Legion renewal of lease at 80 Mary Street. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. And good morning, Committee of Council. Major William Dwight Sharp is not here today because he passed away in 1928. So it's the name of the Legion. It's the Major William Dwight Royal Canadian Legion Branch 15. Okay. So I've got a presentation. I don't know where the slides are. Pardon me?
I was just joking. Is it you're not going to space, are you?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Okay.
Once we're done with delegations, Councillor Tour will go back to the announcements. My apologies. Thank you.
That's all right, I can proceed without it. It's a very simple thing. We were here last year as you know, 80 Mary Street is owned by the City of Brampton. We were here last year to do some lease changes, amendments, and we've done that. We've met with the city added some clauses, we added some clauses, and we executed a lease amendment agreement last month. However, because there was no direction from council, here we are. Okay, so we go to the next slide, please. So July 2026 marks the 100th anniversary of the Royal Canadian Legion, and specifically, it marks the 100th anniversary of Branch 15, the Major William Dwight Sharp branch. Prior to that, we've been operating in Brampton as the Great War Veterans Association, which started in 1919. So we've been operating here for more than 100 years. And we've had some very significant trend-setting milestones that this branch accomplished in Brampton with the City of Brampton. We have a new generation of veterans coming in. As a matter of fact, there are about 35 Bramptonians being deployed to Latvia this year, and another 40 to 50 next year. Can I have the next slide, please? So, on August 1st, 2006, we took possession of 80 Mary Street on a 20-year lease agreement. And that agreement has been amended from time to time from its original terms, including the latest being last month, February 2025. But it will expire on July 31st, 2026. So we need to continue our work in this community because there's a need, and the need for our services has not diminished in the last 100 years. As I mentioned, we have a new generation of veterans coming in. Next slide, please. So here's our request, very simply. We've amended all the terms of the agreement last month, but city staff needs a direction to renew next year. So we have two options. Either we shut down at the end of July, or we renew. And so what we're asking for, the original term was 20 years, we're asking for a renewal for another 20-year term commencing August 1st, 2026. And I bring this now because I didn't want to bring it in 3 months beforehand. That's it. Are there any questions?
Yes, thank you very much, Henry. I have Speaker Deputy Mayor Singh.
I'll be more than happy to refer this back to staff. And Henry, I just want to say I appreciate everything you do in the community. We've had the opportunity to work together on a couple of things, and we've seen each other in the community throughout the years. And I just want to say I see you, I appreciate everything, and it's an honor to have you. Thank you so much, and I will refer it back to staff.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have no other speakers, a motion of referral from Deputy Mayor Singh. Go ahead.
Hey, Mr. Chair, I agree with the referral back to staff. I'd like staff to bring something back though next week at council.
All right, they've acknowledged your request. Councillor Pelletier?
I'm okay to have it moved by Councillor Pelletier.
Very good. Moved by Councillor Pelletier, refer it to staff and receipt at council next week. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Point of order.
Yep.
Just the procedure. I think we have a council meeting right after. So, no?
It's a special
It's next week.
Okay, we're good. Thank you.
Very good. So next, committee, we're going to go back to item 5.1, have an announcement from the local and national space economy This is sponsored by Regional Councillor Tour. We welcome Jason Carvalho to please come forward and speak on this item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Jason.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor Brown, esteemed council members, and guests. Brampton stands on the edge of an extraordinary opportunity, one that can define our economy and industries in our future. Next slide. The global space industry will exceed $1 trillion by 2040. This isn't just about rockets, it's about advanced manufacturing, AI, robotics, and the next generation infrastructure, sectors that Brampton already excels in. We've seen this before. The internet started as a government-controlled project, but when private companies took over in the 1990s, innovation exploded. E-commerce, cloud computing, AI, industries that transform the world. The same shift is happening in space right now. Next slide. Brampton is already a part of this movement. With MDA's new Center of Excellence for Space Robotics, the city has taken bold steps to establish itself as a leader in Canada's space sector. This momentum is undeniable, but in an industry evolving this fast, leadership isn't just about taking action, it's about moving faster than the competition. The question isn't whether Brampton is making progress, it's whether we're accelerating fast enough to lead. Next slide. That's where Space Challenge comes in. Launched by my family office, Carvalho Capital, and my new venture fund, Humanist.bc, Space Challenge is designed to find, fund, and fuel the next generation of space startups. We're already investing in early-stage companies, creating jobs, attracting global investment, and making Brampton a hub for space innovation. And we're going even further. We're soon launching spacejobs.ca, a platform dedicated to highlighting local and national careers in space tech. This will connect Brampton's talent with opportunities in this booming industry, ensuring that as the space economy grows, Brampton grows with it. I was also fortunate to participate in the third Space Tech Cluster meeting at Canon HQ here in Brampton on December 5th, 2024. Seeing firsthand the collaboration between industry leaders reinforced that Brampton has the expertise, the infrastructure, and the momentum to lead in space innovation. The key now is continuing to take action at lightning speed. As of January 31st, we received official approval to use Brampton Innovation District's collateral as a partner in our initiatives. We're actively collaborating with Jasmine and the city's Economic Development Office to ensure this effort aligns with Brampton's innovation strategy. Mayor Brown and any other city councilors, I'd like to personally invite you to join me on the Specific Impulse podcast with myself and Jeff Thornburg, the co-founder and original developer of the Raptor engine, who originally built that engine for SpaceX, which reaches thousands of listeners across North America, investors, policymakers, and entrepreneurs shaping the future of space. Your leadership in this conversation can showcase Brampton's role as a driving force in this economy and attract new opportunities to our city. The future is being built right now. The question is, will Brampton lead it? Because if Brampton means business now, the time is to act now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jason. And Councillor Tour. Jason, don't go away yet. Come back.
Thank you, Jason, for that announcement. I really appreciate you coming here and talking about the space economy in the future and where Brampton needs to be in order to be a leader in it. I think we're very grateful that we're lucky as well that we have amazing companies here in Brampton that are already doing the work. MDA as the largest space contract in Canada right now, $1.1 billion space contract. The mayor always talks about this. He always has his line where he talks about, people instead of saying hello Houston, they're going to start saying hello Brampton from the space station. So it is amazing to see that and at that event at Canon Canada as well with Moonshot happening, a lot of kids from our local schools were so excited to be there to learn more, to learn about not just, when people think about space, they just think about the rockets that are going there. But, when you look at the robotics, you look at every aspect of it, I think a lot of the youth here in our city is very interested in it. So I appreciate that ventures like yours are investing in startups and educating our youth to get into this space economy ahead of time. And I look forward to the next Moonshot event here as well. We will pass that invitation of yours to Mayor Brown as well, and hoping that he can come to your podcast and speak.
Perfect.
So thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tour, and thank you, Jason, once again, and for the invitation. A motion moved by Councillor Tour to receive. Oh, Councillor Pleshy, your hand is still up. Is that for the previous item?
My apologies, Mr. Chair.
Very good. All in favor? That carries. Next, we are going to item 6.2, a delegation from Sherry Ann Ram, the co-chair, and Charles Quimbra, the member of the Environment Advisory Committee, regarding 8.2.1, ground cover maintenance and prohibited plants bylaw. Welcome, Sherry Ann and Charles.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You want to ask? Yeah, good morning, members of the committee. We would like to first ask if you can have an extra 5 minutes to speak on behalf of Lorraine Johnson. A letter is in the package already, but we want to speak to a few points that Lorraine presented to us.
Can I have a member move for an additional 5 minutes?
Might not even be.
It may not even be 5 minutes.
So moved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Morning, Committee Council, City Staff. Charles Quimbra, member of the Environmental Action Committee. Our delegation here in support of the new ground cover maintenance and prohibited plants bylaw. Across Canada, habitat gardening has developed as a response to challenges like biodiversity loss and climate change. As a result, a surge in public interest of alternative gardening styles. Naturalized and sustainable gardening is gaining popularity among homeowners and municipalities due to its multiple benefits, such as increased pollinator habitat, lower fertilizer and herbicide use, decreased water usage, and the cooling effect during heat waves. They also help in sequestering carbon and absorbing excess storm water during large summer storms. Recent Ontario court decisions favor naturalizing landscape emphasizes our need to update our yard maintenance bylaws to reflect evolving community expectations and legal standards. Brampton is currently at the forefront of this movement with numerous plans, policies, and strategies supporting biodiversity. This updated bylaw will directly help these efforts and support Brampton's Grow Green Environmental Master Plan's goals. This current update will help in clarifying maintenance standards for private properties, list prohibited plants, and grant residents more freedom in their gardening approaches. Other municipalities are also updating their yard maintenance bylaws. It's crucial for municipalities to focus on health and safety rather than aesthetics when updating their bylaws. Municipal council support for these progressive policies is essential, as you have the power to help pollinator-friendly gardens flourish. The Environmental Advisory Committee is in full support of this bylaw and are very excited that if passed, we will be setting the bar for future municipalities to follow. It's great to see Brampton leading the way with respect to not restricting naturalization efforts, but while still maintaining maintenance standards for public and private properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Yes. So thanks again for allowing us a few extra minutes. This is my opportunity to present on Lorraine Johnson's deputation. As I said before, the letter is already in the package, so I'm just going to highlight a few points from Lorraine specifically. So just to give you a little bit of a background on Lorraine, Lorraine is a best-selling author of books on gardening and an expert in naturalization, pollinator gardens, and on reforming grass and weed bylaws. Lorraine co-led a national campaign on bylaw reform and was a subject matter expert for updating the City of Toronto's bylaw. And Lorraine has been involved in all of the major court cases in Ontario over natural gardens, such as the Sandybell case and the Douglas Counter case. So Lorraine feels that the staff report is fantastic to start with and is really impressed with Brampton leading the way on this issue. Brampton's leadership, she believes, can be followed by other municipalities and offer real guidance beyond just Brampton City's borders. So Lorraine is proposing a few tweaks that could really help enhance the bylaw quite a bit. The first one is changing references that currently say native to naturalized. And this is because few gardens are comprised entirely of native plants, and gardens that combine native and non-native plants should be allowed under the bylaw. The second is the current draft doesn't appear to include appeals, and appeals are important to include since there's a possibility that bylaw officers and plant experts might misidentify plants. A couple other additional points. Consider changing the 20 centimeter height restriction currently proposed for all ground cover to turf grass. Municipalities such as Toronto and Prince Edward County recently did this when revising their bylaws. This small change will ensure that residents need to keep their lawns mowed, but it clarifies that you're not requiring other non-prohibited ground cover that gardeners grow should be cut to 20 centimeters. The last one is to remove the phrase "so as to not be unreasonably overgrown." The courts have ruled that aesthetic language like this is too vague and subjective. All the bylaw needs to say is that gardens must be maintained. So thank you again for allowing us the extra few minutes. Charles and I would like to say in closing that we are in full support of the bylaw, and we have Pam later on will speak about this. So we are, as the committee members, we are in full support, and we also support Lauren's letter as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry Ann. Charles, just stay right there. Councillor Tour.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that excellent delegation, Charles and Sherry Ann. Agree with most of the things that you've delegated here for. We'll speak to more of that once that presentation comes up, but I think this is a step in the right direction that finally we're doing something about this. Most people don't realize, including myself, what I got to learn more recently over the years is having grass is probably the least environment friendly thing you can have in your house. You know, we can have incentives to electrify things, have solar panels, have, you know, smart thermostats, all of that. But then if you're outside watering your lawn for 2 hours every single day in the summer, fertilizing it, cutting it, mowing it, maintaining it, that perfect height that you could possibly play mini golf on, I think that's not environmentally friendly. So I think this is a step in the right direction, definitely. You're making some great recommendations here. So we'll speak more to this once that presentation comes up. But thank you for all the work you do at the committee.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tour. Moving receipts of the delegation. All in favor, any opposed? And that carries. Next, we have a delegation from Aretha McCarthy, CEO, and Angel Massey Singh, board member of Revive, regarding a request to support for Revive the Sexual Assault and Rape Crisis Center appeal. Welcome, Aretha and Angel. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors and esteemed members of Brampton City Council. My name is Aretha, the CEO of Revive, the Region Appeals accredited Sexual Assault and Rape Crisis Center. I have my board member, Angel Massey Singh, here with me, and I thank you for allowing us to speak today about our funding shortfall issue that directly impacts the safety, the well-being, and health of our Brampton community. Next slide, please. So Revive's mission is simple but urgent: to empower, support survivors by providing comprehensive trauma-informed care and advocacy. Revive is not just a service provider. We are a lifeline for survivors of sexual violence. Every day we witness the impact of trauma, but we also witness resilience. With trauma-informed therapy, advocacy, and support, survivors in Brampton are finding hope and healing in our space. Next slide, please.
And that hope and healing is achieved through 4 key services: engagement, so that's community outreach and survivor-led initiatives; clinical services, which is our free trauma-informed and culturally sensitive therapy sessions, which is our core service and in demand; and education and action, prevention and awareness programs. Next slide. Since the appointment of our new CEO, Aretha, our reopening and rebranding just less than a year ago, our counseling session bookings have surged by 947%, as more than 205 individuals have engaged with our programs, mostly Brampton residents, with 83% reporting increased feelings of empowerment. These numbers tell a story of a growing need, a life-changing impact, and a social return on investment. Next slide. We'd be remiss if we did not acknowledge the trusted organizations that Revive collaborates with, that work collectively to provide holistic services to survivors, supporting them every step of the way. These partnerships are critical in providing a lifeline to survivors. Next slide.
So today, the reason why Angel and myself is here is because that lifeline is at risk. Revive is facing a $300,000 funding shortfall due to reputational damage beyond our control that precede our rebranding. Now, despite our best rebuilding efforts over the past year, the consequences are devastating. We're currently facing closure of essential services, which will leave survivors nowhere to turn, loss of therapists and advocates, which provides fewer professionals to support those in crisis, and increased trauma and suffering, where survivors are forced to struggle alone, silence and isolation, because this will provide confidential care, survivors losing hope. And this is the reality we cannot accept.
Next slide. Just to drive home the point, the work that we do at Revive, it restores hope, it rebuilds lives, and it provides a safe space for healing. These are basic human needs. Let me share the words of one survivor, and the quote is up there, DG, who truly speaks for all. I love my therapist, she listens to my needs, and I cannot thank her enough. I have progressed more than I ever thought I would. I truly appreciate all that this organization has done for me. Next slide.
Our presentation today is not just about funding, it's about people. And this is why we're here. It's about ensuring that survivors in Peel do not suffer in silence, but we can't do it alone. So we are asking for partnership with the City of Brampton, a partnership that recognizes that supporting survivors is not an expense, but an investment in public health, community safety, and social well-being. With the City of Brampton's support, we can expand outreach to impact even more survivors, improve services to provide timely and effective care, build a Brampton where no one has to face sexual violence alone. This is not just a moment of crisis, but a moment of decision. We ask that the City of Brampton stand with us today. Imagine a region where every survivors have immediate access to support and where no one suffers in silence. This is the future Revive is fighting for. Next slide, it's our last slide. Both Angel and I just want to thank you all for your time and commitment to our community, and we look forward in working with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aretha. Thank you, Angel, and thank you for your delegation. I see no speakers here. Madam Clerk, do we have speakers online?
I don't see anybody.
Councillor Power, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we could ask to have this referred back to staff, that'd be great.
Thank you very much. I see no other speakers, so we have a motion moved by Councillor Power to refer your request to staff. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you, lady.
Thank you.
Next, we have a delegation from Carrie Campbell, Independent Consultant and Community Research and Project Lead for Revive of the Feminist Collective Project regarding Women and Gender Equality Canada, the WAGE Project. Do we have Carrie online?
I'm here, thank you.
Go ahead, Carrie, you have 5 minutes.
Hi, everyone. I am joining virtually. I don't see my slides. Is there someone who might be able to share them, or should I just proceed?
We'll see if we can bring that up for you.
Thank you.
We're going to have that put up for you. Just one moment.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Sorry.
No worries, no worries.
It looks here like the introduction slide for some reason is swapped with the title slide. So would I be able to have someone just click on slide number 2? Thank you so much. So again, my name is Carrie Campbell. I am a registered social service worker and community researcher. I have a focus on the stories and challenges faced by women, children, and families who survive intimate partner violence. I have had the privilege of leading this Peel-based research project from its inception and official launch in 2021, with each phase of the project leading up to the development of multi-year strategies and policy recommendations based on the qualitative analysis of the resilient voices in our community. Policy paper will be completed this spring, and I continue to collaborate with our principal investigator, Dr. Laura McDermott of the University of Guelph, on a publication of the data. I have also had the pleasure of working with the wonderful funders at Women and Gender Equality Canada on this project and the CEO at Revive during the project's final year. And now if we could go to slide 1, which is supposed to be slide 2. Thank you. Our collective project was united through a signed charter, bringing together organizations and individuals with lived experiences. This group collaborated to identify key challenges in systems meant to reduce and eradicate GBV and IPV. Next slide, please. Number 3. The study was titled Barriers and Solutions to Reporting Gender-Based Violence, the Experience of Survivors, a community engaged and participatory action research study. The participants were 60 survivors, many of them clients of Revive, and other related organizations who are partnered on this project. So with 60 survivors we had of intimate partner violence, all of them living in the region of Peel, and the study was co-created with community, government, and academic stakeholders. It aimed to understand and improve community-driven alternatives to support survivors of GBV, and the main focus was on exploring the barriers and the solutions to reporting. Using an intersectional framework, we recognize that survivors face multiple compounding forms of oppression, requiring diverse responses. So with ethics approval from the University of Guelph, the Community Advisory Board co-developed our interview guide protocol with open and closed-ended questions. Next slide, please. So here are just a few key GBV statistics from the region, as well as some of the main barriers that we saw to seeking help, which were identified in our study. Next slide, please. Thank you. The data we collected highlights the complex and interconnected needs of GBV survivors, encompassing safety, emotional support, financial independence, and education, all of which reflect both immediate and long-term challenges. At the same time, survivors face significant barriers rooted in their identities, social environments, and other systemic issues, including identity-based discrimination, fear of judgment, financial instability, and language barriers. Notably, results imply that some participants had reasonably suitable experiences with our region's police services, but a general opinion was one of discontent, especially with regard to the assistance, deference, and cultural suitability of the services that were offered. Next slide, please. So this one breaks down experiences with social services. Counseling was the most accessed service at 72%, with 62% of participants reporting high satisfaction. Our upcoming policy paper will provide additional insights into survivors' experiences with multiple social services. Over 50% of survivors first sought support from family and friends, especially for emotional and financial help. However, cultural stigma and fear of judgment often prevented them from seeking formal assistance. Survivors consistently express a need for financial aid, housing, mental health support, and validation. Next slide, please. Our recommendations for organizations working with the VAW GBV sector, those working within it, as well as different levels of government that fund, oversee, and interact with agencies. These include enhancing legal protections, expanding cultural responsive services, improving community education, addressing systemic inequality, and in the context of GBV. Strategies and suggestions are further detailed in the upcoming policy paper. Some participants expressed that female officers, for example, played a role in making them feel supported and safe, and their experiences reinforced the idea that increasing the number of women officers may foster trust and improve survivors' interactions with law enforcement. So, as Peel Regional Police has recently announced its 30 by 30 initiative to have women comprise 30% of all recruit classes by 2030, this commitment aligns with some of the experiences in the study and presents an opportunity to enhance survivor-centered approaches and build stronger community trust. Next slide, please. I'm almost done.
Carrie, we're just out of time. If you're able to wrap it up. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I'm pretty much we can go to the next slide here because I just discussed some of these policy recommendations. So in the final slide, this is something that you should be able to access through the multi-year strategies that our Community Advisory Board has constructed. They're adaptable and they organize different approaches to create an inclusive and effective response to GBV within our region. I have a little more on that, but I'm happy to share that. It will all be in the policy paper that's coming up shortly by sometime this spring. And the next slide. These are just our call to actions and some ways that we feel that City Council and our municipal regional governments might be able to assist in the findings from our research. And the final slide is just my thank you slide, which is the next one. So thank you again to our funders, Women and Gender Equality Canada, to Revive for all of their support and assistance. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carrie. I don't see any questions. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Power to receive your delegation. All in favor, any opposed? That carries. Next, we have delegation from Andrew Mirabello, or that one has now been removed. Very good. So our next item is 7.2, a discussion at the request of Mayor Brown regarding regional waste management. I believe the mayor is online.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Asante. We have a motion prepared by our government relations staff and the Office of the CEO. I believe the same motion is being presented today at Mississauga Council, and it will allow us to have negotiations for how this potentially would be downloaded. Right now, we've been told from the province that Mississauga would be getting waste immediately, and that Brampton and Caledon the following year. At our regional council meeting, the last regional council meeting, we had a discussion that we wanted to do it frankly, I think it's advantageous if we do it ourselves. The province writes the wording. They may miss something. If we do it by looking at the entirety of the costs, the revenue, and the operations, and we combine the city and the regional functions, we may actually be able to find savings. It's why we delayed the regional procurement. And so this motion was necessary for us to be able to have the conversation at the regional level. And so, like I said, this does not bind us to taking this on, but it allows us to have the negotiations.
Thank you very much, Mayor. So I have no speakers on my screen. So we have a motion moved by Mayor Brown. Any questions? I see none. All in favor, any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much, Mayor. And so with that now moves us into the Public Works section of today's agenda. And we have item 8.1.1, a presentation regarding ground cover maintenance and prohibited plants bylaw, presented by Pam Cooper, the manager of the Environmental Planning, Environment and Development Engineering. Welcome, Pam.
Good morning.
The floor is yours.
Good morning, Chair, members of committee, staff, and attendees. My name is Pam Cooper. I'm the Manager of Environmental Planning, and I'll be speaking to the proposed ground cover maintenance and prohibited plants bylaw. Next slide, please. So as our delegation already stated, across Canada, people are really learning about the benefits of naturalized gardens, spaces where typically you had a traditional lawn, and these are being transformed into vibrant ecosystems. These gardens are cultivated with plants that attract bees, birds, butterflies that support diversity. Naturalized gardens are a proactive local response to global challenges represented by climate change and loss of habitat. Next slide, please. Our delegation also spoke to the importance of naturalized gardens and the benefits that they provide to all of us, including increased biodiversity, urban resilience to heat islands, reduced water fertilizer uses, and importantly, what we saw during COVID is that these gardens are really important for health and the well-being of our residents. Gardens connect us with nature, and they offer benefits that reduce stress and increase mental health and well-being and improve the quality of life. Next slide, please. We do have a strong policy background at the city to support this proposed bylaw. The Brampton 2040 vision referred to Brampton having sustainable places. Our new Brampton plan speaks to green infrastructure and specifically speaks to urban agriculture, rain gardens, pollinator gardens, and naturalized yards. And our Brampton Grow Green Environmental Master Plan has an action to review and update city bylaws to ensure they do not restrict naturalization efforts on public and private lands. Next slide, please. As well, Brampton is designated as a bee city. This designation recognizes a municipality's commitment and efforts towards pollinator protection. As part of the bee city designation, a municipality commits to continue to find opportunities to support and protect our pollinators. Next slide, please. Staff completed a policy review and some benchmarking, and we found that municipalities that haven't updated or modernized these property standards bylaws may be opening themselves up to the expense and liability of court challenges. These court challenges have been faced by Toronto, Mississauga, and Burlington. As a result, many municipalities now are updating their yard maintenance bylaws. We looked at our bylaws, the current grass bylaw, property standards bylaw, as well as the proposed new encroachment bylaw that's also on the agenda today before you. And the outcome is that the current grass and weed bylaw is outdated, it's unclear, and it doesn't align with our current city policies and plans. Next slide, please. So the key changes are to replace the word weed with the term prohibited plant and actually include a list of those prohibited plants so we know what they are. The new bylaw distinguishes garden from ground cover, and the new bylaw modernizes and updates the provisions relating to maintenance. And it also supports continued enforcement of excessive growth violations by amending the administration penalties bylaw to have new graduated penalties for non-compliance with escalating penalties for repeat violators. Next slide, please. So in dealing with prohibited plants, the current bylaw doesn't really define what a weed is. It refers to the noxious weed bylaw. Many of those weeds are specific to agricultural practices. And this leads to uncertainty for residents and enforcement officers. What we've done is added the term prohibited plants and included a list of prohibited plants that are actually relative to Brampton, the things that we are experiencing here. So Phragmites, garlic mustard, and so on. Next slide, please. With regards to maintenance, the current bylaw says you can't have grass or weeds over 20 centimeters high. So with this new bylaw, we have still kept that. Your grass cannot be higher than 20 centimeters high. However, we also say that your garden cannot be unreasonably overgrown or cause potential adverse safety effects. The new bylaw says that you cannot affect the safety, the visibility, or the passage of the general public. You cannot encroach onto the roads, the sidewalks. You cannot infringe on driver and pedestrian sightlines or the adjacent properties, and you're not allowed to have prohibited plants. Next slide, please. So our recommendation is to repeal the current weed and grass cutting bylaw, to enact the new proposed ground cover maintenance and prohibited plants bylaw, and to approve the proposed amendments to the administrative penalties bylaw. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, these changes to the weed and grass bylaw to replace it with the ground cover bylaw will align the maintenance of yards with our current city practices, goals, and policies. And it will provide residents with more clarity on the maintenance of their gardens, including fusion, pollinator, and naturalized gardens. It will reduce stormwater runoff, reduce the fertilizer use, decrease water use, and finally promote biodiversity and habitat for the birds and pollinators. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cooper. I have speakers on my list. Councillor Tour.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Pam, for this amazing presentation. I've been looking forward to this. This is really good work. One, congratulations on putting this together and all the incredible work your team does, including the parks team as well. They've done these, we've started doing eco gardens across the city. We're proud to have one in our wards that we participated in the fall. A lot of volunteers came out. Everybody learned something new. We planted some hazelnut as well that one day, hopefully, kids in the park are going to be picking from there and eating. That's the staff that does all that work is absolutely incredible. They have great ideas. When you talk to them, the amount of knowledge they have, sometimes they're easily ignored because we just see them in the parks just doing the cleanups, just doing the plantings, and we just think they're just about their business. But once you get talking to them, you realize the amount of information and knowledge they have is incredible. So thank you to all the teams that have put this together. My questions are just more related to the delegation that was there earlier from the Environmental Advisory Committee. Do you want to respond to that, Pam, on any of those suggestions that they have brought forward?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we can replace the term native with naturalized. I think it makes sense because nobody's garden is 100% native. My own isn't 100% native. The other remarks that they made with regard to height of turf grass ground cover, and removal of unreasonably overgrown. I would like to take that back and discuss it with legislative services and bylaw enforcement, just to ensure that we're making the right decisions for the bylaw as it applies to Brampton before we bring back any proposed revisions for council.
Okay, sounds good. I think we all agree on the intent here. It's more just finding the right language for it. So that would be the direction I would give if I can send this back to staff to work on this and come back again.
Yes.
For next week on council, would that be possible?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. That'd be the direction I'd be putting forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Tour. So we're speaking.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Singh, please.
Sorry for interrupting. I got a little confused. I just, like my colleague, and I have a feeling I'm going to regret saying this because there's going to be an issue and it's going to be like, like I supported this, but they're not going to be happy with the situation, a neighbor or something, but I do wholeheartedly support this. I think it's very innovative. It's something I've been looking at doing on my own property. Just growing up, I grew up in Cambridge, but growing up and seeing a reduction in the bee population, the butterfly population, it's a real thing. And you see it in front of your eyes. And so solutions like this will help with that. So I'm very supportive of this. I know maybe 5-6 years down the line, I might have a few calls where neighbors aren't that happy, but that's something we'll deal with and we'll maneuver. But the intent, the spirit behind this, it's the right thing to do. So I'll support the referral back to staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Singh. So we'll have a motion moved by Councilor Tour to receive the delegation. All in favor, any opposed? The presentation. That carries. And now we will bring item 8.2.1, ground cover maintenance and prohibited plants bylaw. We have a motion moved by Councilor Tour to refer back to staff for next council. All in favor? That carries. And with that, we now move ahead to item 8.2.6, a staff report regarding a budget amendment and addition and renovation of Chris Gibson Recreation Center Child Care Facility integration held by Councilor Tour. Councilor.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Just had questions regarding this on, if you can explain what we need the surplus funds for, where the cost difference is coming out. Some of the numbers, like to me, were just not making sense. So if you can just give us an explanation on what's happening here in this case.
Certainly, through the chair to Councillor Tour, the original budget for the daycare was approved back in September 2023. Since that time, a considerable amount of design work was done that took over a year. That design work was then completed. The design was given to the contractor for pricing. The pricing from the contractor has now come in. And it exceeds that original budget, and therefore the budget amendment is required to cover those additional costs.
And it exceeds by that amount?
Through the chair, at a high level, it's based on primarily the cost of the construction, as well as the design was a little bit more expensive as well. And I should point out, we've also included some contingency as well in this budget amendment in order to just be prepared for any unforeseen conditions that could transpire.
Yeah, I can't put a finger on this, but I'm not comfortable supporting this wholeheartedly. We budget for something, we design it, we come back, it's going over costs. I know the more time we spend on it, costs go up as well, but at the same time, just out of the budget season, we come back and we're talking about adding more money towards a project. I'm just fully not comfortable supporting it.
Through the chair to Councillor Tour, I should point out when that budget for the daycare was approved back in September 2023, it was based on an order of magnitude estimate before any design work whatsoever was accomplished.
Is there no opportunity to rework the design to fall within the budget that we had put forward already?
The team has spent the last few months actually working with the contractor, going through a value engineering exercise with the consultant as well, and was able to actually bring down the cost by almost 10%. There has been a cost escalation over the last couple of years, not just with respect to construction, but even the design ended up costing a little bit more as well. So this is essentially, as low as this price can go based on the current market conditions.
And just another question on this is, we passed the budget not too long ago. Why wasn't this brought up at that point? Why do we need a budget amendment at this point right now, just a couple months later?
Sorry, through the chair, Councillor Tour, can you clarify what timeline you're talking about?
Yeah, so the budget that we just passed for 2025 was not too long ago, in January or January? Yeah. We had passed that budget in January. We're in March right now. Why are we coming with this budget amendment at this point and not back in January, where it could have been built into the budget that we were passing for the year?
Through the chair to Councillor Tour, the contractor's original estimate to do the work or price to do this work was submitted right during the time when budget deliberations were happening. There was a period of time where staff needed to review that, work with the consultant, go through a value engineering exercise, basically bring it down as much as we possibly could. So it took some time. We wouldn't have known the value of the budget amendment at the time. Now at this point, we have done all that work over the last couple of months. And this is basically, the final price, if you will, for the daycare to be constructed.
I appreciate it takes time to put all of this together, and you're working with different parties, getting the pricing back. Again, I'm not comfortable amending the existing budget to have this included in that. If I would propose it, I would say that this should actually be for the next budget then. I know that'll cause more delays, but then I don't know how we're doing time management on this. Like, I don't know where to put a finger on this, but I'm just not happy that we do a lot of budget cuts. We go through the budget process, go through deliberations. Every department makes presentations. Like, we're cutting every single dollar and cent. We're getting scrutinized for the budget increase. That's what residents expect us to do. I come to a council meeting 2 months later to give $2.3 million as a budget amendment. I don't know if I can go back to my residents and say that's how we do business here.
Through the chair to Councillor Tour, one point that I wanted to mention, just based on the schedule, the schedule right now for the completion of the recreation center to be substantially complete is April of 2026. If we proceed with the daycare construction, the daycare would also be completed by that time, and that would actually provide enough time for the daycare provider to then fit out the space and start using it. Any sort of delay in terms of the construction would prevent the daycare from going into operation. I just wanted to point that out from a schedule perspective.
Also, maybe somebody else could remind me on this as well. I know when we had brought this forward, I think it was because there was a funding opportunity that was happening. I think it was either the federal or the provincial government was proposing funding for daycares, where if you bring in a private partner that comes in and does it, we would save money on that. Like, the reason, at least I had supported this in principle at that time to add this daycare facility to Chris Gibson was based on that, it's a cost-saving exercise, that we're going to benefit from different levels of government funding this project. I don't know. Doesn't seem like the case right now. So I'll just reserve my comments, the rest of the comments, till we have further discussion. I see Mayor Brown is on the board as well, so maybe we'll hear from the mayor on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tour, and I have some comments as well, but I'll let the mayor go first. Mayor Brown.
Thank you, Councillor Visante. Obviously, anytime the budget is amended, I'm not happy because we've designed the budget hoping that there's no additions required. So I actually asked a number of questions about this before the meeting, and I found out that primarily this is driven by $692,000 in design costs. I'm surprised that adding a daycare to a recreational facility costs $692,000, but that's what we've spent on geotechnical reports, building permits. We have to pay for building permits ourselves, SPAs, class estimates, design and contract administration. But I think a big portion of this increase is the contingency. And if I could ask Peter, what is the total number on the contingency?
Through the chair to the mayor, the contingency right now that we've allocated is approximately $750,000.
So you get the design of $692, you get the contingency of $750. And, council, I asked this question, so I'll say it publicly. I said, what if we took the contingency out? And the problem with the contingency is right now we're building these daycares with the timeline of 2026 in mind, that there is the provincial federal agreement on these $10 daycares that are funded. And if there is a change in the federal government, this program will not be renewed. They will honor the existing ones. I believe we've got one coming into Embleton for 2026. We've got this one for 2026. I forget if we have a third, but no one can predict what's going to happen federally. But I do think the daycare program that was established under the previous prime minister is good, and we have a massive need. And so I do believe the ones that we currently have daycare contracts signed, I believe there's one executed at Embleton and one executed at Chris Gibson. We don't want to lose those, and if we're not operational by the time agreed, we could lose those. I believe the contingency fund was put in place in case we need to work night shifts and day shifts to make that deadline. And so if it looks like we're not going to be ready for 2026, then it was my understanding, this was explained to me by staff, that we would have the option to tell the contractors they have to do literally work 24/7 to make sure we meet that deadline so we don't lose these daycares. But if we believe that we can get it done by the date and not have to use the contingency, we could take the contingency out. But I guess my question to Peter would be, for all of council to hear the same response I got, how confident are you for these projects and we're talking about Chris Gibson today, but we could also talk with other daycare. How confident are you that we're going to meet the construction schedule for the daycare projects in the city?
Through the chair to the mayor, based on the information that the contractor has provided us today, there's confidence that we'll be able to meet the timeline of April 2026 for the completion of the daycare component and the substantial completion of the entire recreation center. Having said that, time is of the essence, and again, we don't know what we don't know. That's provided that there's no unforeseen conditions when the construction of the daycare starts.
So what would happen if we took the contingency out?
Through the chair to the mayor, it would just potentially require, if there was anything unforeseen that came up, including any potential cost escalations, we would have to come back to this committee and likely require a further budget amendment if cost escalated beyond what they're estimated at right now.
But that wouldn't be probably until 2026 anyways, right?
Through the chair to the mayor, more than likely, as the construction wouldn't be scheduled to be completed until April of next year.
Okay, so maybe that's an option. I'll leave that to Councillor Tour as a suggestion, or Councillor Vasante, if we wanted to remove the contingency, that would help mitigate this number. But I've been clear to staff, I don't like seeing budget amendments either. I want to see everything in place, but I'm also sensitive of the timelines we're trying to achieve here for this for this federal provincial agreement. That I think there's a high likelihood will not be continued beyond 2026.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Councillor Fortini.
So this was done in 2023 when they did. Construction costs, top 20 has gone down 12% from then to now. So is there any savings now on the rec center itself?
Through the chair to Councillor Fortini, in September 2023 was the time that the estimate and the budget was approved. The design was then completed over the next year or so, and then the price was provided at this point.
But my question is construction costs from last year, or a year and a half ago to now, it's gone down 12%. Lumber, concrete, steel. So we should be actually saving, since the rec center is being built now, on the construction cost, and also on the daycare. That's addition. I'm not saying no to the daycare, but looking at this and looking at the rec center, and we add up all the construction costs, we should have some saving on the rec the contractor didn't come to us and say, well, construction costs has gone down, so here's an extra $1 million or so. And that's at any rec center.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Fortini, as you'll recall, the purchase order for the award of the rec center, so the original project was awarded in August of 2023, so prior to this contemplated change order for the daycare being provided. That price was a firm price. Once that purchase order was issued back in August of 2023, there would be no opportunity for the city to come back to the contractor for any sort of savings. And basically, the price that the contractor is providing now for the daycare is based on pricing today for the daycare. The reason the order of magnitude estimate is relevant is because it was just that. It was an estimate. Even the square footage of the building, I don't believe, was contemplated or finalized at the time of that estimate.
When I drove by there, how long has been the construction going on? It's been on construction for a while now. Is there any? Yeah. Huh? Yeah. When did it start, the construction?
It has, through the chair, maybe I'll ask our Director of Building Design and Construction to confirm the exact start date of the construction. The purchase order was issued back in September of 2023. The contractor mobilized, so it's basically been in construction for over a year now.
Well, that long,
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Fortini. Councillor Tour.
Thank you. Peter, if you can just clarify, what is that contingency amount?
Through the chair to Councillor Tour, maybe I'll refer to our city solicitor with respect to next steps on this.
Through the chair, council may wish to consider going in closed session to discuss the breakdown of the cost, because that has negotiation implications.
Sure. I would be happy that you move this to closed session then.
Let's do the next council meeting, right? Because it's not being approved today.
Okay. We can refer to the next council meeting as well, for closed session at next council meeting then.
I think that would be the best way forward, considering the discussion and the questions that members of committee have. Perhaps I'll move that we refer this item to council and that we also add closed session item to assuage any members' concerns or questions. So moved. All in favor? And that carries. Very good. So we'll now move on to the community services section. And we have only one item there, which is item 9.3.1. Motion moved by myself. Do any members have questions? No, this is the fire hydrants during winter months motion. Do any members have questions? Councillor Fortini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and yes, this is a great idea, but my concern is, what do we do on public roads? Are we gonna have contractors now cleaning our fire hydrant? We had this discussion last term, and I was this winter, like, I know we had a lot of snow, 2 storms behind each other, and we got residents cleaning the fire hydrant, and then the snowplow just buries them again. You know, so it's a very complicated thing, and so we're gonna have to add an amendment to the budget now, because you go into main roads, and I've seen them all, they're all buried, because you got the sidewalk cleaning, and then you got the road. You've seen on Howden and Glenvale, they were buried, so, you know, I think we should also look into where the fire hydrant is, put like something on that sticks up in the air, so if they're buried, at least we kind of know where they are, and we might have to add, I guess, the contractors more to clean these. So, but I do agree, we have to know where they are. I've seen a couple of them knocked down, because we had to get these bobcats cleaning the sidewalks, and I couldn't see them, and they knocked them down. They had to go back and fix them. It happens. So, I'm in support of this, but I think there'll be a cost to this on our public roads.
Thank you, Councillor Fortini. Councillor Tour.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to understand the rationale, like if you want to just explain why you bring this forward, like what's the case today, like what's the situation today, and why is there a need for it? And further to that, I would also say, I'd rather find us ways to incentivize kid behavior than, the language there about potential cost recovery for non-compliance. I'm assuming that's in fines. That's not the direction I'd like to see this go. So I would propose that as a change to this as well. And if you're open to this, Chair, maybe staff report back on this before we look at any changes. I think if that's the direction here. But just to understand, what's the rationale here? What's the case today, and what are we looking to do?
We have time.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Mayor Brown, I see your hand up, or is that for the previous item?
No, I would just agree with Councillor Tour that the winter season is largely over, so I think we have time to get a staff report on the financial implications, but obviously we want to have access to our fire hydrants, but I just too would like to know what the cost of this is.
Very good, so.
If that language may already be in our snow contracts. If it isn't, boy, it should have been.
All right, very good. So I'll first address your question, Councillor Tour, with respect to the motion arising out of calls and emails from residents noting that they witnessed situations where Brampton Fire were appearing at a location and were having trouble locating the fire hydrant, and they were concerned about fire hydrants in their neighborhood having been buried. As Councillor Fortini mentioned, it does happen. And in other municipalities, as the motion notes, this is part of the bylaw, and there is a responsibility placed on the nearest property owner to keep an eye on the hydrant and make sure that access to it is clear. And so that is where this motion comes from, Councillor Tour. And I would consider your amendments to have a report back on this, and to also to remove the section on, if we can just scroll down. We can remove the piece on including potential cost recovery for non-compliance. And I'm still happy to move it with those amendments, if you're okay with that. Councillor Plush.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support the new direction now. I'd also like to hear from Fire to see what the issues that they've come across as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have a motion as amended. And just clarifying that this is now a request for a report back with the potential cost recovery for non-compliance removed.
So through you, Chair, we have moved by Councillor Tour that the following proposed motion be referred to staff for consideration and report thereon as amended to remove cost recovery for non-compliance.
Very good.
Is that-
And requesting a report back.
Right.
No further questions from members? So moved. All in favor? That carries. We're at question period for Public Works. Do any members have questions? I see none. Madam Clerk, do we have questions from members of the public for the Public Works section of today's agenda?
Through you, Chair, I see no questions online. Thank you.
Very good. And not to miss, for the Community Services section of today's agenda, do we have questions from the public?
Through you, Chair, there were no questions for that section.
Very good. So we'll now move on to the Legislative Services section, and we have item 10.1.1, staff presentation on proposed bylaw to regulate encroachment on city lands. We have Allison Sanders, Strategic Leader in Project Management for Legislative Services. Welcome, Allison.
Good morning, Mayor Brown, members of committee and staff. My name is Allison with the Legislative Services team, and I'm here today to present to you the product of a multi-year project, the proposed encroachment bylaw. While the initiative was primarily led between Realty Services and Enforcement, thanks is owed to staff from across the organization who contributed to its development and its review. And those include staff from Transportation, Right-of-Way and Safety, Environmental Planning, Stormwater, Parks, Forestry, Legal, Risk, and Insurance. Next slide, please. So in 2022, Council directed staff to review city bylaws regarding encroachments and examine amendments that would permit soft plantings on city boulevards to enhance local neighborhoods. Staff were further directed to suspend all enforcement of such plantings until a report was returned. The discussion in 2022 was initiated in response to residents' concerns about prohibitions against soft landscaping on city boulevards. Next slide, please. Now, the review uncovered additional gaps, including that the city currently does not have a bylaw which specifically regulates encroachments onto city property. Today, unauthorized encroachments onto some forms of city lands, such as parklands and highways, can be managed through other existing bylaws. However, without a dedicated encroachment bylaw, staff lack the tools necessary to effectively address encroachments on other forms of city-owned property, such as open spaces, flood control infrastructure, and stormwater management facilities. For example, recently we've seen some cases where alterations or installations were made in areas like drainage easements, decommissioned rail spurs, and watercourse corridors that have caused flooding and damage to adjacent properties. This gap presents challenges in effectively managing risk and maintaining our public spaces. Next slide, please. So to address these gaps, staff and divisions from across the organization collaborated to draft the encroachment bylaw before you today, ensuring that it balances safety, efficiency, and sustainability. Now, the four objectives of the bylaw are to regulate encroachments on all forms of city-owned lands, to establish additional enforcement mechanisms to allow staff to effectively manage these encroachments, including the introduction of administrative penalties, and to formalize the existing encroachment agreement process currently administered by Realty Services, including the grounds for refusal and methods of appeal. This will help protect the city's rights and obligations, reduce the city's exposure to risk, and ensure safety and accessibility on public lands. Now, a key change will be the formal allowance of soft landscaping on city-owned boulevards without an encroachment agreement under certain circumstances that ensure public safety and support city maintenance operations. Now, this approach aligns with other local surrounding municipalities, and it supports the objectives of the proposed ground cover maintenance and prohibited plants bylaw that we heard about this morning. Next slide, please. So while certain encroachments can have negative impacts and should be prohibited, others, such as gardens, can contribute to neighborhood beautification and enhancing urban streetscapes. Moreover, well-designed gardens can contribute to environmental sustainability and biodiversity by providing habitats for beneficial insects and pollinators. Working in collaboration with environmental planning, guides will be available for residents with recommendations on appropriate boulevard plantings and configurations, encouraging residents to choose permitted, durable, and salt-tolerant species. Next slide, please. Now, boulevard gardens will be permitted without an encroachment agreement only in certain circumstances. It's important to note that not all boulevards will accommodate boulevard gardens without an agreement due to their size. Some of the conditions required to permit the installation of a boulevard garden without an agreement are that they do not exceed 45 centimeters or obstruct visibility, they do not exceed the grade of adjacent land features, they do not contain any hard landscape features, they do not contain shrubs, bushes, trees, thorns, sharp leaves, or any prohibited plants as defined in the proposed bylaw, the proposed ground cover bylaw. And they're not unreasonably overgrown or neglected. Residents will bear the sole responsibility for boulevard gardens and install them at their own risk. The city will not be responsible for the loss or damage of any encroachments due to municipal operations, maintenance, or repairs. Following work, the city will only be responsible for restoring the boulevard to sod or seed. Next slide, please. So the two recommendations before you today is to enact the proposed encroachment bylaw and to approve the amendments to the administrative penalties bylaw to establish graduated fines for non-compliance. Next slide, please. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions or invite my colleagues up from Realty or Enforcement to address any other inquiries that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Allison. And members, I'll bring forward the staff report, item 10.2.1, and I have Councillor Pelletier on the board.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks also for the presentation. Love this. My only question would be, let's say if somebody plants on the boulevard and then that person moves, the person that comes in doesn't want to maintain or anything. Is that where, I think in your last remarks, that the city would be responsible for resodding? Is that where we would come in then to resod that encroached area?
Through the chair, the reference to resod or seed would be only as a result of municipal repairs or operations that had caused damage to an encroachment on a boulevard. Where property ownership changes and there's a transfer with a boulevard garden, it would depend if that boulevard garden was permitted as of right without an agreement or with or associated with an encroachment agreement. I understand encroachment agreements are not transferable. However, if the boulevard garden was to be maintained by the new owner, so long as it's in compliance with the standards established in the bylaw, it would remain permitted. If they did fail to maintain that existing boulevard garden and a complaint was received, that's where enforcement could intervene and require them to either restore the boulevard or maintain it in accordance with the standards established in the bylaw.
Okay, so that's where I would say we need to, I think, relook at that. If I purchase a house and that person had an encroachment agreement and I didn't want, why would I be penalized on something that I didn't want to continue? Hypothetically, of course, I would probably want to continue it, but hypothetically, if I didn't want to, why am I being penalized? I don't have the agreement.
I might invite some Realty Services up to further elaborate on if there is an encroachment agreement executed.
Through the chair to Councillor Paleshi, Rajat Gulati from Realty Services. So we can definitely work with the resident, I mean, again, within the scope of the bylaw, if they are permitted without any documentation, that can be transferred. Otherwise, also we can take back the recommendation and work out a way within our agreement to make it transferable to some degree. We can definitely figure out a solution to that. So I think if you can leave that with staff, I think we can work on it.
Okay, so can that be done before, prior to council next week?
Would that be okay? We can definitely take it back with legislative services and bring it back.
We'll take that back and have conversations whether that's required to be in the bylaw itself. If it is, we can certainly make those revisions prior to the bylaw being added to the agenda next week.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Paleshi. So first I want to ask Councillor Paleshi to move receipt of the presentation. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Tour.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the work on this. I think this will make a difference, but just in layman terms so that everybody understands, residents understands too. After we do this, like by default, let's say somebody's planting flowers, nice flowers around the tree that the city plants. Do they need to come ask permission to do that? Or by default, they're just assume that now it's okay to do that?
So long as those plantings and installations are in accordance with the standards in the bylaw, like the setbacks from curbs, sidewalks, height restrictions, they would be permitted without any prior approvals. If they did want to plant something that exceeds those standards, then they'd be required to submit an application to seek formal approval prior to installing them.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tour. I don't see any further questions. So motion moved by Councillor Paleshi to receive the presentation. All in favor, any opposed? That carries. And we have a motion to refer item 10.2.1 back to staff and report back at next council. Moved by Councillor Paleshi. All in favor? That carries. And with that, members of the committee, we move to item 10.2.2, staff report regarding ward boundary review, summary of public consultation. Deputy Mayor Singh.
Thank you, and I've had a lot of conversations with colleagues over the past week, and there are a few things that are consistent when I talk to them, and many things inconsistent, but consistency is they are thankful for the work that Shauna and Shanika, you did. You kept them very informed, and so thank you. Your work is very, very appreciated. Genevieve, thank you to you and your team. Thank you. And then what else is consistent is the uncertainty of the future. And so this is such a permanent decision. Once we make a decision like this, there's no turning back. And with the de-amalgamation happening, service board discussions, and whether it's going to be more councillors or not, we're getting too tight into the next election. So I know the last option is to, I believe, maintain the current ward boundaries, and I'm gonna put that on the floor with the caveat that I consider it a pause and continuing for next term, and picking up from there. That'll give time to see what the results are from de-amalgamation, see what happens with our seats. And I think it's appropriate, I move it because I will have the largest population along with Councillor Tour. And so we understand, some of the challenges that come with the existing ward boundary, but we also understand there's a huge uncertainty, and we need that certainty to make an informed decision. So I'll move the last option, and we'll move for that, and hopefully pick it up next term if I make it through. Thank you so much to you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Singh. I don't see any other speakers. So we have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Singh. All in favor? That carries. Any opposed? That carries. All right. So we now move on to public question period for the Legislative Services section. Madam Clerk, any questions from members of the public?
Through you, Chair, I see no questions online.
Very good. And with that, we move on to the Economic Development section. There are no items. Any questions with regards to economic development?
There are no questions online, Chair.
Very good. And so with that, we skip right ahead to Corporate Services section. And Deputy Mayor Singh, do you wish to chair?
No, it's okay.
Very good. So we'll bring up item 12.2.1, staff report on office development charge deferral and waiver pilot program. This was held by Councillor Pelletier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks to staff for getting the report to us. In going through it, I think that we're on the right track. A couple things that I'd like to understand prior to us approving any kind of exemption waiver for all office in the city of Brampton would be, what does this mean for the developer in terms of trying to obtain the funding through the bank to finance their project? I'd like to understand if that goes against their, I guess, any kind of impact that they would, or risk that they would have with the bank to finance their project. I'd like to understand that. And then I'd also like to understand, I know that I see that the number with the potential risk, we don't actually know what that number is for development charges, but what I'd like to know also is the potential for the increase in tax revenue, which I've been asking for. So if we're going to have that number that we pulled out of the air for the impact of DCs, then I'd like to say potentially that we have a number that we can put to the increase in tax revenue. So I'd like to know that as well, and I'd like to have that come back to council next week.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Through the chair, Councillor Pelletier, the answer to the first question about what this means for the bank, the proposed program that we're putting for incentives is a deferral and waiver program. So if the DCs will be deferred, they will not have to be paid by the developer upfront. And once the conditions confirming that the space developed is actually office as per the criteria that we have set in the program, that those development charges should be waived. So I can talk about like for the bank, but that's not actually a loan. That's not the payment that they have to guarantee. We're considering now how we structure that program, and that's what will be brought back on April 2nd, which will detail exactly what's the criteria, what will be required from the developer for that, and so on. And we'll keep in mind as part of designing that program that will be brought back to council, what does that mean in terms how the developer deals with the bank for that. Hope that answers that part of the question.
Yes, for sure, Nash. And I would assume that any money, listen, if a developer doesn't meet the criteria, they don't get the DC waiver. I agree 100%. But the bank is going to look at that as a potential cost that the developer would need to pay for if they don't meet the criteria. So I guess what I would ask then, and you're probably already looking at this, is, along with, the risk, can we align ourselves with whatever the bank is saying in terms of, if you're not meeting the criteria, then yes, you have to pay those bonds. So I think what I'm getting from you is we're going to have that information by the 2nd, which is good. I just want the conversation with, Nash, you pick a couple private sector companies that we could talk to, and maybe if you can reach out to a couple of the banks just so we can align ourselves with all three parties.
We'll do that, Councillor Pellecci.
Thanks so much, Nash.
For sure.
And Councillor Pellecci, before I go to the mayor, you wish to refer this to the next council meeting?
Sorry.
Well, I'm hearing April 2nd. And
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't
April
see that.
2nd. Very good. Just for clarity. Thank you.
Yeah, so,
Mayor Brown.
sorry. Okay.
No, if I can get Nash just to comment on that.
Oh, go ahead. To the treasurer.
Sorry, through the chair, Councillor, we will need today to approve the recommendation that we put a program in place. So if we can approve the recommendation, because we need to meet certain timelines in order to be able to do that, the details of the program will be brought back on April 2nd, and we'll take into account the comments that Councillor Pellecci made.
Okay, I'm okay with that as long as at that time when it comes back, if we're changing any of the recommendations, we're okay with doing that.
Yes, will be brought back as part of that program, Councillor.
Okay, and then the other thing that I have to say is we're talking about all office.
Yes, through the chair, confirmed. So currently it's full exemption for major office. That will continue as it is without change. We're adding to that the incentive program for non-major office, which will be the program that will be brought back on April 2nd and will become part of the allowed program by the DC bylaws going forward.
Okay, and as of right now, there's no cap on the waiver.
As of now, there is no cap, but that will also be brought back as part of the program on April 2nd.
I'm okay with looking at the potential for a cap. I'm not in favor of it as of right now, but I'll certainly wait to see what you bring back to make the decision. Thanks again, Nash.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pellecci. So speaking to a motion to move the staff report, Mayor Brown.
Yeah, I support the approach recommended by Councillor Pellecci. I believe this could be a powerful economic development tool. Historically, we have struggled in Brampton with more residential development versus employment. And if you look at the overall budget matrix, the revenue produced through employment is much more valuable for the finances of the city than residential, which doesn't support itself. And so if we could help rebalance, I think this is very attractive. I love looking at the angle of what tax generation it will create. I think that's an important component of the report. The reality is something that's not going to be built that gets built is a net benefit to the city. We have some of the lowest employment vacancy rates in the country. What I would say, though, is I hope there's some safeguards in this that someone who built employment a year ago is not going to come to the city for a big check. This is about an incentive for what was not going to be built. This is about pushing people over the line to build. And I know anytime you bring an incentive, anyone who had done something in the last few years comes back with their hand open. And so I just hope that it's very clear if we go down this path, this is not eligible for someone that wants to make a claim against the city for what has already been built.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayor Brown. My next speaker, Councillor Tour.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just want to echo Mayor Brown's comments on this as well, but more importantly, wanted to just take this opportunity to thank staff. Nash, you and your team are amazing on this. I know Carolyn's put a lot of work, sometimes on the fly, and you guys have also hijacked the economic development meeting that one time, but we were able to get to the solution. So thank you to the ACTA staff, Amanda, Paul, and Denise, for all the work that you put behind this. I know this will be great news for the city, where we can incentivize, again, good behavior like this, where we can get offices built in our city. I think it's the right time to do it when we're doubling down on being Canadian and supporting the Canadian economy now more than ever. I think this is one of those steps in that right direction, along that same line as well. So thank you for all the work that you do. I look forward to that report coming back.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tour. So we have a motion to move item 12.2.1, moved by Councillor Pelletier. All in favor? That carries. Our next item is item 12.2.2, staff report regarding annual statement of remuneration and expenses for 2024. Councillor Tour.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to, whether it's refer or defer this item to next week's council meeting for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see no other speakers, so I have a motion moved by Councillor Tour to refer this to council next week. All in favor? That carries. And our next item now is item 12.2.5, a staff report regarding implementing Brampton's Made in Canada procurement policy. Councillor Tour.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to get some clarifications on this. Wholeheartedly support the way this is going. Just questions on this. I know it was talking about excluding American vendors, but there is some exceptions that are there to it. If somebody could just explain those exceptions to that, because I believe there's also, again, American vendors that are making their things here in Canada, providing their services here in Canada. If somebody could just make sure that we get a good idea of that before we move this forward.
Through the chair, I can speak to that. I'm just loading the document, if you give me a second. So through the chair, the approach taken here is to make this policy and the implementation of this policy easy for staff to understand and implement. And we start by excluding American vendors. That includes their subsidiaries. But we allow for American vendors that can show that they are providing at least 60% of the value of the contract from Canadian supply. And we will request that information as part of any bidding process that involves American vendors. Then there are other exceptions that align with the purchasing bylaw. The purchasing bylaw has exceptions for when you don't have to use competitive procurement, and some of those were relevant and made sense to apply to situations where normally you would exclude American vendors, but you might want to consider including them. Those are circumstances such as when there's no other viable supplier of a product or services other than an American vendor, or if you have an existing contract and you're expanding the scope of that contract. So what we did was we looked at the existing exceptions that allow for limited tendering and determined that some of those would apply in these circumstances and give staff the necessary flexibility and operational, the ability to operationally implement this policy and continue the work of the city. And so if you have any questions about any of those specific exceptions, I'm happy to discuss those.
Thank you for that clarification, Samir. Just wanted to make sure that it's on the record that we're happy to still do business with American companies as long as they are building their goods here in Canada or providing their services through Canadian workers. I think I just wanted to make sure that that is a clear message on this. Thank you.
Councillor Pleshy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to confirm that, with this, it also includes the 60%, also includes the labor force. I would assume that anybody doing work, an American company doing work in the city, they would be using Canadian workforce. Would that be included in the 60%?
Through the chair, yes, that is included. The way that the 60%, if you look at that exception, it says at least 60% of the total contract value is attributable to goods, services, or construction. So if it was a good, it would be something produced in, or if it was a service, it would be provided by workforce located in.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mayor Brown.
Councillor Tour highlighted the same point that I wanted to point out. If you make the goods in Canada, then you're still eligible. I think that 60% caveat that Samira explained achieves that, so glad that's in. I also wanted to add, under our previous trade agreement that has not been honored by the current U.S. president, everyone had the right to bid on our contracts. But since they're throwing that agreement out the window, we had the legal right to do this as well. And so I just want to put it out there as well that if things return to the way they were, where Canadian companies can export to the U.S. and American companies can export here, then we would obviously rescind this procurement policy. This procurement policy is a result of what is happening in the U.S. And our disagreement, I reiterate again, is not with the American people, who we have great admiration for and respect and a historic friendship. The disagreement is based on a misguided policy of the current administration.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brown. I don't see any other speakers, so I have a motion moved by Councillor Tour to move the report. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. And that takes us down to 12.3.1, a discussion item with the request of Councillor Pleshy. Councillor Pleshy, is this another discussion, or are we done with this one on development charges for office?
No, this relates to the item for the staff report. Thank you.
Very good. So we'll move forward then. And with that, I think that now concludes this section. Do we have any questions from members of the public, Madam Clerk?
Through Chair, I see no questions online.
Okay. And next we have public question period. Do we have any questions from members of the public with regards to any section from today's meeting?
Through you, Chair, I see no questions online.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. We have no closed session items, so our last item of business today is item 16, adjournment. Committee is next scheduled to meet on Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025 at 9:30 a.m. I have a motion moved by Councillor Power to adjourn today's meeting. All in favor, any opposed? That carries. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.